Welcome to part 2 of our interview with John Moser. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, make sure to go back and check it out. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on them all. Now for the rest of the interview.
Now, you've gone from that to speaking at the White House about the opioid crisis.
Sure. Yeah.
So what was that experience like?
Well, that was an incredible experience. Very patriotic. I was in awe. And I don't know how deeply you follow our history, but the initial meeting place was Teddy Roosevelt's office when he was Secretary of Defense or one of them, and it just escalated from there. Got to see the press pit and walk through the Rose Garden and, that cavernous look of red carpet that you always see on the movies. I got to walk through that. So right off the bat, that to me was just like, that was just me walking around with my jaw, dropped. And that was like a big part of the day. Right.
Yeah.
And then going to the infirmary, right. And all the doctors, the seat you sit in for your examination, everything's embroidered with the presidential seal, right. And all the people, Secret Service pushing you around and leading you. So that was one part of it. The great part about it was I was able to speak in a forum with the Surgeon General and the First Lady and Mrs. Trump, the drug czar at the time. Now, all these guys have changed, obviously, right, with the election. And a gentleman by the name of Larry Ludlow. I don't know if you know about him. He's an old-time economist, really sharp guy who himself has suffered with addiction. So what we were able to do, and we were able to represent obviously our industry, the hospitality industry, and this crisis that we have. Now, outside of the overall crisis and the addiction, what we focused on was the recovery part of it, and that we believe that the stigma of addiction really, really cuts into your growth in the corporate world. Okay. We're missing $300. Well, Norm, he is a recovering addict, right? That is exactly, believe it or don't believe it, that's exactly what's being said in workplaces all across the North American continent, right? You have an addiction. It doesn't matter where you're at in your recovery. You're going to have stigma challenges. And we were able to do is put together a program that came right out and faced those stigma challenges and gave you tools on how to work through those stigma challenges and gave you opportunities. And what we're talking about is, eventual, not eventual, but constant growth through the program, giving you tools on how to work through stigmatism, specifically addiction, but it's applicable to anything because we live in a rotten world where people constantly love to bring up anything negative about another person. Side note, but it applies brilliantly to our industry. So we were able to adapt and give people a playbook on, what to expect in the recovered world, right? Along with that, we were able to give, and still are working diligently on it, getting people an opportunity past just a line level position, perhaps owning your own franchise, regional management, kind of work your way through the ladder. So it was a blessing to get there. Melania is beautiful. No ifs, ands, or buts. Her speech was extremely sympathetic. She's had to have had addiction, opioid, and/or addiction has had to have touched her life in some way. I can tell the way she speaks. She's extremely passionate about it. We were able to voice our opinions to the legislators that were there in the room. And, we're hoping that we were able to make a difference in the way recovery's handled in the workforce.
Right. So you can talk about it. How do you move and how do you get action?
Well, I think the first thing to do on our end is to take practicality and to get like sign immediate action. I think there needs to be an overall stigmatism a campaign against addiction, not just at the work level. I think it needs to be portrayed everywhere that you are someone's child, you are someone special, you are a person, and that your past doesn't exclusively define you going forward. I think that would be a great start. I
Mm.
think a secondary start would be getting people that are in recovery more tools. There's no tools in recovery. It's a shame. It really is. It's a sin. It's an absolute sin to watch. There's no tools. I mean, there's so many great people trying, Norm, and they're working so hard and they're working diligently. And there's people that volunteer their time. And I met people, incredible people. My best friend, who I'm doing this with, lost his son to addiction. He's met so many great people. He single-handedly has changed the stigmatism. Without a doubt, I see it. I see it in our area, in the Philadelphia area. He was a somewhat of a regional public figure, so that allowed him a platform. So how do we get the great change? I think, ending stigmatism and giving people better tools in recovery. And I don't mean like access to counselors. I mean, action plans, growth plans, and give them the tools, because you're never going to control all the naysayers around you. You have to give these people tools to deal with these naysayers, because in a lot of cases that's the defining the straw. You know what I mean? And I know people firsthand that have been defined. I know a story firsthand of a kid that worked diligently in recovery, and he rose the ranks in a business, and he was afforded his own store as a general manager. And the day of the opening, it was taken away from him. And it was taken away from him not because of his performance or anything that he did, but because of something that he did in his past that created this negative stigma. And that man, that he took that so hard that I think that was the beginning of the end for that
Mm.
person. He ultimately passed. So
Wow. Yeah, that's horrible. And, one of the other things, we've talked about this on the podcast before. Um, I think one of the very first things that's got to happen is removing addiction from being a crime to, an illness. And I mean, you see the prison systems and how they're filled up with just a lot of addicts. It's tough, and I wish we could do something to do that, because it is an illness. And just I know in Hawaii they used to have a program. It was a great program that got people into recovery programs that couldn't afford it. I think it was up to 90 or 120 days. But instead, they've decided, to put people into prison.
yeah,
It's
it's ridiculous. I mean, what we incarcerate, well, especially us in the United States, our whole prison system is so ass backwards.
Mm.
It allows all the people that should be in jail to walk free, and it keeps nothing but the chronic poor, the chronic offender, and the chronic drug abuser, who is really just self-medicating. It keeps all them people in the prison system,
Mhm.
right? And allows, but I mean, I'm the wrong guy to talk. Here's a system that's ran by judges that are elected by their friends that are lawyers. So, I mean, I have a problem, on a lot of levels there. But what you said really ties to stigmatism, if you think about it too, right?
Right.
When it when it's not treated like a crime and it's treated like a mental illness, right? Because that's and I've learned so much about it, but one thing that I've learned is that it's self-medicating. There is a mental illness, there is a trauma behind your addiction. There really is. And some people are fortunate enough to get to that and figure it out. Other people aren't. But the way that we perceive it from the word go, we perceive this as dirty and that self-loathing and that you've done it to yourself. And from the very word, I literally seen people go, "Oh my God, your son has passed away. I've been with my friend. Your son has passed away. How did he die?" Well, they made a group decision as a family. They weren't going to hide it. So he said he overdosed. The- If I had a camera to take their face, you wouldn't believe the way the empathy runs out of them. There's no empathy. It changes to disbelief, then to anger. It's amazing to watch people. So if that's how our perception of what's going on from that level, no, that's why we're incarcerating people left and right for those problems. I mean, that's the way we think about it on its very simplistic level, And look, they made it that way, and I wouldn't hold. I hope you don't have any pharmaceutical sponsors, but I wouldn't actually. I think they're the most heinous participants in the entire process, because when you know something and you do it with the knowledge, it's like stealing. It's like controlling someone's heart, right? With that level of control and that level of knowledge, and to continue to do and act and behave and to create a culture, right? That's a culture, right? That FU culture. We're going to do what we want. We're going to incentivize doctors the way we want. We're going to put out as many sample packets as we want. And what we want is endless supplies of money. I hold them accountable. I do. On a heinous level. I really do.
Yeah. I know a little bit about Xanax and, how it's just destroyed. Hey, look, if you've got a problem with being anxious, okay, well, we'll give you, Xanax. Get on Xanax. Well, you get on Xanax and you try to get off of Xanax. Well, what they don't tell you is you're going to be a hell of a lot more anxious.
Yeah, right.
You can't get off of it. Well,
Yeah.
I am not, and I got to throw this disclaimer in there, but I don't know all the side effects of Xanax, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it's what I've seen. And I've talked to people who say it's worse than coming off of heroin, and it's a much longer process.
And our whole medical system. I don't know. I know very just enough to be dangerous about your medical system, but ours is an absolute. It's a sham.
Ours is too.
It's a disgrace. It's a sin. It's an absolute sin. Where we can't get basic, we can't do a collaborative. We can't get kids in college to work in the military and pay for their medical and then have them serve and set up basic coverage is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. I don't feel like Canada is on the take as much as America is. I mean, the United States is, as it relates to the fundamentals of lobbying, right? But it's another broke ass system, another one to look at, right? That we're trying to give. You got law companies that are up 40 and 50% that have received 10 and 15 million dollars in COVID relief money. I mean, where we sent over $1 billion in fraudulent wires to people creating fraudulent accounts to PPP. And then I can take you right now into Philadelphia and show you a half a dozen legacy companies. I mean, 30, 40, 50-year-old companies in our industry that are getting ready to shut the door.
Mm.
I mean, how does this, I mean, we are just so self-serving, right? I don't want to say self-absorbed, special interest, right? Our politicians are at service to their interests, really. And it's a sin.
And it doesn't matter if you're on one side or the other. I mean, it's blind. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all, I tell everyone, we're all the mark. We're the marks for every single person in DC. It's not a conservative or left or right or left or or Democrat or Republican. It's these pigeonholed Congress people that are running our country, that have taken millions of dollars to sit on advisory panels, and they get insider trading, and Nancy Pelosi was tied up in GameStop. I don't even know if it's true. You don't even know I don't know what any of it's true anymore. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And I know I'm watching our industry, the hospitality industry, I'm watching it get destroyed right now. And the help is very small. The Fed, we have to be one of the hardest industries in our country. We make up 10% of the working force in the United States, the hospitality industry. Believe that?
10%. Wow.
10%. That's a huge number, isn't it?
It's huge.
I never realized it was that big until, we got to COVID and we started looking at data, and you got 10% of the working public in the United States of America work in the hospitality industry.
That's Canada.
Right. And
how do we get through this for our industry? You have Philadelphia, takes in, I don't even know. I think it was, I want to say 4 billion, I don't even know the number. I've been over so many numbers, but you have areas and cities that are dependent specifically on the hospitality trades, right? Mm-hmm. Look at Las Vegas. Yeah.
Atlantic City. Incredible. They're giving the rooms away. They have governed the amount of gambling that can take place because it has to be spread. Yeah. And then all along we have the finest military in the world, and we should be letting them and give us the immunizations. We should, you know what I mean? And we have an ongoing problem. The local politicians, are running into problems already with distribution of the immunizations. I don't know.
Oh.
It seems so easy for me and you, Norm. I mean, you and I could just sit here and kind of cherry pick the problems, right?
If we could solve it, that would be, that much better.
That's what it is. You have to, anyone can just spitball problems. It's coming up with the solutions. Yeah. So going back to stigmatism and why I was at the White House, my solution is to end the stigmatism that's coupled with recovery. And I think, if you're currently in recovery, you have a 75% chance that you have worked in the hospitality industry.
What?
75%.
So 10% of the population's in the, wow.
If you're in recovery, right, the odds are, right, that you have worked in the hospitality industry in some facet at some point in your life.
That's crazy numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why we were so focused on it, because addiction is real in our industry. I mean, I'm sure it's real in every industry, but it's prevalent in our industry, right? And it's done to radical measures, because when you join a restaurant or hospitality organization, you become family members. You eat, sleep, work with these people, right? You go out with them. You work long shifts. You work long days. You work shitty days. You work holidays, right? So these people become your family real quick in the industry.
Yeah.
So I can't do enough. Whatever I can do, whatever opportunities I had the opportunity. They asked me to go and speak. I went and spoke. I gave it to them straight, exactly what I thought. They were extremely receptive to it. They were.
Well, if there's any information that you have, PDF or anything, I'd love to be able to put it into our show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you my notes. I'll send you a couple of my pictures that I have from the time I was there. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that we get it into those show notes. Now, I do have something on the lighter side. This is coming from Mr. Rossi, Leo. Okay, so is it true that you were involved with Boys to Men?
Yes. If you go back to that nightclub era in the
Yeah.
90s, and here's my tie to music, okay? And
Okay.
it's pretty simple. Everyone thinks it's overly complicated. It's really not. In the 90s, and maybe Hayden won't know this, but the only way, the biggest source of advertising, especially in the hospitality industry, was the radio. Okay. So if you were a major advertiser like I was, right, you got the opportunity for, special requests, airtime. So if you go backwards and now you see, here's a guy that can pick up the phone and call into the radio station, right?
Yeah.
And who is a street kid that grew up in the city, right?
Yeah.
I grew up on the streets. Now I have the black nightclub thing rolling, and I have all different people coming in and saying to me, "Can you help me out?" Right? So obviously, Boys to Men were established at the time. They were a couple kids that went to a school in Philly called Creative Arts, Philadelphia. And, I did them favors. So I became a trusted advisor.
Yep.
So throughout the years to this day, I still kind of talk and, advise and help. Some of those people have blown up and they're huge and don't talk anymore. And some of them I still keep pretty good contact with, right? So Wanye from Boys to Men, Wanye Morris is a good friend, and I speak to him quite often. And then there'll be another guy that I used to speak to a lot was Will Smith, who as he gained, Will's dad was the Iceman, and we would get all our ice off of Will's dad for the nightclubs. And then Will started out as a rapper.
Right.
And he's the same age as me, but he always seemed incredibly younger than me. I think that if you looked at him from that when he was on the Fresh Prince,
Yeah.
that would be like the closest to when I knew him. He was he even dressed a little bit goofier than the other guys did, right? He was just off a little bit. And, I helped him. We were able to put some music together. And then I was able to be collaborative and help a whole bunch of different people in the industry throughout the years. I have a very small music background. My desire to help people, I think my honesty in the industry, again, hospitality and entertainment, they're brother and sister, right? So they kind of tied hand in hand. So I was able to create some great long-term relationships and friends with a lot of people in the music
Oh, that's
industry.
great.
Yeah, it is. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Some of them have really changed over the years.
Yeah.
Some of them are super exciting and still down to earth. I love it. I love it. What I like is helping people. Again, going back to that helping people. How do you make a living out of doing something that you like doing day in and day out? So
I got to know quite a few successful business people over the last 30 years, and seeing them, not in the music industry, but in other industries, start out small and just, nose to the grindstone. And what's really cool is when you can see somebody that, like, I'm talking hundreds of millions or billions, and not change.
Yeah, right. I know. I tell you, I think it all starts from the go with those. How many people have you met that are active in business and are very successful, but maybe are not doing it all for the right reasons,
Mm.
right? And they're the ones that I see they seem to kind of lose it. The ones that are doing it for all the right reasons and they seem to be more, level headed are the ones that but yeah, I'm with you. It's great to see people like that. It's great to be around. What's really cool is to have expectations of someone and then to spend time with them, and then they're completely different. Now, am I judging that person? No, I really don't feel like I judge, but especially public figures and people that are, in the spotlight, they come with a perceived, I got a vibe on how they're going to act, and they don't act that way. I'm trying to think. I was at an award for Spike TV
Mhm.
and award show. It's called, I can't think of it's called the Stag Awards. That's what it's called. And it used to be an annual show, and they do it in a big production set over there in Hollywood. One of them big old time sets. Oh, I know who it was. It was Cameron Diaz and the guy from, I always get his name wrong. What's the show on HBO where they're in the tundra? Kingdom or King's Landing, or what the hell's the name of that show? King's Gate. I can't think of the name of it.
Are you talking about Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones. So Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that guy, and I played ping pong with him and Cameron Diaz for about an hour. I didn't even know who he was. You can't miss her. She's absolutely striking. She looks
Yeah.
exactly like she does on her shows. I don't know her per
Yeah.
se, like her shows, completely down to earth, unpredictable personalities, right? Like you said, I don't know if I just caught them on good days, but both of them were super down to earth. We had 3 or 4 beers, we had a great time.
Oh, that's great to hear. Usually it's the negative, right?
Yeah, I've run into them guys, but it's always,
Yeah.
here's an old saying, and this is kind of with Philadelphia. And my dear friend owns an Italian restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, and it's a brand. And he owns one in Las Vegas and Atlantic City and now in Pittsburgh. And it's called Martirano's. And it has an Italian theme to it. And and here's something that him and I say, and it's the truth. Everyone's a wise guy in this restaurant until a real wise guy walks in the door, right?
I know
So
exactly what you mean.
right.
Yeah.
So you see all these different. So they're the people that are typically the ones that have difficulty dealing with power and fame, right?
Yeah.
But the guy that walks in the door, very quiet, never known, unassuming, over tips, very friendly, very matter of factly, and moves along his way, right? The guy who's a nobody, he comes in and he makes a big Broadway production out of everything. And it's always great to see that humbling moment when the real wise guy walks in the door, and all what they call bubblegum gangsters, right? You watch a whole group of men that have just been pounding their chest in front of their wives for like an hour and saying who they know and then all of a sudden the little old wise guy actually walks in the doors, and it's like everything
Yeah.
comes down and everything's. So that kind of reminds me when you bring up the different types of people and how they react. Mel Curie probably has a million stories like that. Leo Rossi probably has a million stories like that. What a great storyteller Leo is, isn't he?
Oh my gosh.
He is an incredible storyteller. I talk to him. I probably talk to him every day.
Really?
at least 3 or 4 times a week, at least at the worst. Yeah.
But you gotta say hi to him for me.
Everything he says, always his vocabulary,
Yeah.
his, ah, what a true pro.
Now, I mean, again, just going back to Joe and Leo, I mean, if you're talking to them, make sure you mention, just Norm says hi. But I had a great time, and it was a really interesting interview, and just getting to know their podcast was kind of cool. But
Yeah, I'll tell you, that was a labor of love, and we're just getting it rolling, and we had some great numbers. What a memorial to Joe, right? I think this is, I mean, this is his documentation. We haven't even tipped. He's got stories with the KBG. He has stories in a Colombia on a drug buys. It never ends. Him being hung out the window. We went through and picked all the real life moments that happened to him that were portrayed in different movie series and shows throughout the genre. And
yeah,
even like a lot of things that happens on The Sopranos were based off of evidence and things that Joe came up with.
wow. So if you don't know who we're talking about, so Leo Rossi, who you and then Joe Pistone, the real Donnie Brasco, and man, it was so cool talking to these two guys. And you're right, like Leo just takes it over. He's a storyteller.
Yeah,
You
he's a
know?
great story. He's the foremost mob authority behind the camera, without a doubt. And he's written a lot of great works that you've seen that have been produced in the movies. And he was a really well-known star. And I think for his age and everything he does, he's still extremely active. They're all going down to Miami and they're doing an Amazon Prime show called Gravesend. And that's a show put together. It's on Amazon Prime and it's put together by a guy named William DeMayo. And he was able to put all these great characters together. It's a who's who of old mob movies. He put a storyline together, and Armand Asante, will be in this next season, season 2, and the time set, you'll like this, Norm. The time set is like 1985, 1986.
Oh wow.
Right? And now they were in Brooklyn, right? And he has a Monte Carlo SS. Remember the one, the
Yes,
85,
yes.
86, right? And now they're going to go to Florida and they're going to be in Miami for a month and they'll be shooting down there. I believe it's the second season. And then Leo's an advisor and he's an actor also in the movie.
Wow. Well, I have to thank Anthony Malcurie for introducing us to the guys. Yeah. Just you know what? That's what I really love about this podcast. I don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea where it's going to go. And I meet so many interesting people because we're not talking about fast cash. We're talking about interesting people just telling us about their lives, and it's always incredible to find out what people have done.
Oh yeah, and their stories, right? And everyone has a story. It's
Yeah,
amazing. And the people you meet and the stories that they tell you are incredible and so inspirational too.
right.
I'm inspired by people as much as I stomp my foot and complain, about the future. I'm always inspired by great people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's great meeting people.
So I got just a couple questions here for you. One, the big one. What was your biggest struggle and how did you overachieve it or overcome it? Sorry.
Overall business struggle or recently or
You name it. What was the thing that made you, I mean, it was hard to overcome, but you were able to get over it and you were able to overcome it.
in life, my son, right? And the acceptance of him and all that. And the wonders of him.
Mhm.
You're handed that when you're dealt a hand like that, it's easy to pity yourself and find, a lot of good reasons why to feel sorry for yourself. But to truly meet someone of his magnitude and to be part of his growth and development that's the overcome. So that would be the personal one. And what hurts me is my experience.
Mm.
I never thought I'd say that. As I get older and I go further in, I kind of have an idea of how things are going to end up. And I have to put more time into that challenge of giving people more time. I know that sounds absurd, but my biggest challenge, is sitting back and letting things develop, not using right now in my life. That's my biggest challenge, is letting things develop, letting my company handle the development of things, and not lean so hard on my gut instinct,
Mm.
because I might get a gut instinct. And I have to learn now that I'm a bigger operation with a lot more people. And sometimes I kind of have to suppress my gut instinct. And that's a challenge for me right now. And whether I'm right or wrong, the suppression needs to be done for the growth of the company and the growth of my team members.
Right. Yeah. Then I'm not sure if I'm explaining this right, but then it would become more micromanaging. If
Yeah,
you're telling
right.
me, would it be?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I have to that's a struggle nowadays. I think finding, again, I'm all based on helping people, right? So who's my next big help, right? And, where am I best needed to help, right? And how do I point that MBB bus in that direction? That's been challenging lately. And I think primarily because our industry has been changing so rapidly, whether it be the unemployment, the store closures, the shuttered businesses, filing government papers, it's just a different ball game on how I help people,
Mhm.
right? I have to nowadays I have to stay in tune to everything that's coming out of Washington as it relates to our industry. My clients want to know. I add value when I'm able to pick up the phone and tell my client to apply for this grant or send them the link for this specific grant. I have to be diversified. My lending arm, I need to understand, you know, equipment leasing. I would say overall site location, overall real estate criteria has changed. Businesses, they've just did it. They've just proven, you know, that they can put more money, they can do more volume and gross revenue by adding more drive-throughs on and not letting people in. Well, how does that affect the look of the new Chick-fil-A? Or how does that affect the look of the new, burger franchise? The one that I'm thinking about, the Shake Shack, they're closing 50 US stores and they're converting them into boxes with pickup windows and takeout windows, basically.
Hmm.
We do a lot of franchise sales. We have to go through and scrub criteria. In the past, the criteria might say, I need 1,500 square feet that needs to sit 40 people. Well, that criteria now could have changed dramatically. People want outside seating, right? They want, John, look for stores with outside seating. Look for stores that have accessibility for takeout windows, which is funny because in Europe, specifically in Rome and Italy, they had windows built during the Black Plague that gave people the ability to get a glass of wine, and then they would shut the door. It's only a little tiny, it's called a wine door. It's only a little tiny door, and it's just enough room for a glass of wine. And now fast forward 450 years plus, they opened those windows again. A lot of them had them mortared, brick and mortared shut. They opened those windows again. And that is, the 21st century pickup window, right? How are we looking at real estate? So they're the challenge. COVID's been the biggest challenge, not accepting COVID, not pushing through COVID, not making sure that my clients are getting a return on investment. All those day-to-day things we're good and solid with. For me, my biggest challenge has been keeping up with the pivoting and maintaining my freshness and maintaining my value in an industry that's going through not only a drastic downsizing, but also a whole new way we look at things. I mean, the next wedding that you go to or you're invited to, do you expect there to be a 20-minute COVID test?
If I'm a politician, no.
Yeah, that is, to me, has been the biggest challenge, is just running my industry in the United States and being as helpful as I can to my clients who are under, some of them, I'm blessed. All my clients are doing, most of them are doing extremely well. But I also have, legacy companies that are doing extremely well, that aren't doing well. And it's based on COVID and the restrictions. So,
I was listening to you talk, and it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting. One of my favorite fast foods, no kidding, is Sonic. Well, you got to wait outside in your car to get it. So their business model must be, perfectly fine. There's a restaurant here. I like it. I don't think they're in the States. I don't think so. But A&W.
Yeah, they might be. Yeah, they have been in the past. I went to them, yeah.
When I was a kid, the best root beer, but as a kid, they were set up as Sonic, and you'd go out, you'd wait, somebody would come around, take your order, and if you're in the right spot, you got a gallon of root beer. But they just converted like 10, 15 years ago. They got rid of all their drive-ins. Now they've got all the typical franchises where you go in and sit.
Yeah.
I bet.
Well, Inspire bought Sonic, and Inspire bought Arby's. And I would say the cluster of Sonics that we operate, even with the restrictions that probably closed us 25% of 2020, we're probably, as a cluster, a group, we're probably up about 35 or 40% year over year.
Whoa.
Yeah. But likewise, my very dear friend Joe Volpe has the most famous and well-ran event group in Philadelphia, and he is down 95% in business. And we're talking a guy that puts off 1,000 weddings a year and maybe another 300 or 400 galas. Look, there's an industry that got walloped, right?
Yeah.
Another hospitality industry. So, yeah, I mean, everything. I like where we're going. We're asking for good food. We're not all bent up on one dietary restriction or another. It seems like we're actually looking at quality and portion size more. Smaller portions are starting to be accepted in the United States. There's a definitely a call for higher quality food. It's okay to be a little decadent in moderation, which is great, because then you won't have, 300 Krispy Kreme franchises going out of business because Dr. Atkins, you know what I mean, came up with his Atkins bar. So I'd see harmony and balance, but the younger generation that's out there buying and dining, first and foremost, they want great food, but it has to be an experience, because they're capable, they're knowledgeable, they know food better than you and I do, Norm. If we were lucky, we could get, I don't know what you got up there, but it would be Julia Child. That was our food guru. Then as we became young adults, Emeril Lagasse comes into play. But, you have now a generation that's out there, of 30-year-olds that are traveling, that are doing business, that are super educated on their food, that know food trends, that know food celebrities, that know food influencers. So you're dealing with a higher caliber client. Yeah, but and I think it's good. The cream rises to the top.
Yeah, very good. So let's switch this over to success. What's been your greatest success?
I think a single most greatest success point would be single would be difficult. I would think our follow through. I'm in a fees based business. I have clients that pay me fees. I for not for an untangible product, right? So man, I really got to sell something, and I think my my biggest success has been listening and reading what people's needs are and then being able to target their expectation and hitting that. We have I don't think there's a client, and we'll know after this broadcast, I'm sure, that has worked with us that couldn't say that we haven't brought a level of value to the organization. And I think that the way that we get to that is by listening and setting the right expectation bar and being honest and realistic in those expectations. So, it's not just talk. It's actually, that has really been our resume has been our greatest success.
Gotcha. Yep. No, it's interesting just listening to what you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast about culture and building that culture. And, it all winds down to what you just said.
Yep.
So anyways, look, I've taken up a lot of your time today.
No, it was great talking to you. I hope we can remain friends. I just started following you, and I'm going to get caught up very shortly.
Oh, well, that would be fantastic. I mean, one of the, like I said a bit earlier, is getting to know really cool people. And I'm sure we could sit here and talk another couple hours.
Yeah, sure.
Easily.
And then you throw Leo into the mix. Go. Oh, man, if Leo could talk the ears off an elephant. I actually seen Leo talking to a houseplant. I swear to God. I mean, this man will talk to anyone. He's a doll, though. He's the best. He's the absolute best.
Yeah. All right.
Anthony, too. He's a spitfire, isn't he?
He is. It was a real pleasure talking with Anthony. I mean, he's just so direct, right? Just like he is on the show. But at the end of the day, you could it's not only about systems, but it's just his lifestyle. Like, boom, he is, I don't know, he just impressed the heck out of me, just being able to talk to him.
He is super impressive. He's intimidating to a lot of people. I know my guys at times were intimidated by him. Yeah. But he's good at what he does. And, I deal with someone like that anytime rather than give me the soft shoe day and night. Forget about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got some great people. And prior to him, I don't know if you know this, we were talking to Larry Broughton. I don't know. Yeah. So Larry, again, just a super guy. But anyways, this is that whole string, Larry, it goes back to Matthew Shedd, which goes back to Isabella Hamilton. That's the whole string of people that we got to know that we would have never.
Isn't that like that Kevin Bacon thing? You can get to Kevin Bacon.
That's exactly this.
7 people. I can get to Kevin Bacon within like 2 people. I know that, or 3.
There we go. Is he?
His dad was a real famous city planner. He actually laid out some of Philly's best public works.
Really? We just had an incredible conversation. I don't know how we ended up talking about city planning, but we started talking to Philip Yang down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he led us over to the city planner who just finished Penn Station in New York.
Oh, how about that? Yeah.
It was incredible, and just getting to meet all these people, just fantastic. But anyways, and that leads me to the final question. So at the end of every podcast, we always turn the question over to the guest. And do you know a guy?
Yeah, I do. I know a couple guys. I just like the way you said it. You caught me off guard. Yes, I do know a guy. Let me ask you this before I answer that.
Sure.
Because I know a lot of guys. Do you have a direction?
I have no direction. It could be anywhere. Put it that way.
Yes, I have. I'll tell you what, I got a good guy that you could talk to, a real character, a gentleman by the name of Steve Martirano. And he's the owner of the world famous Cafe Martirano's. And all you have to do is just search him. Hayden's probably searching him right now.
He's doing it right now.
Can you go to YouTube, Hayden, and are you able to play it for us?
I don't think I can play it on here. Like my mic won't pick it up, but I've got it pulled up.
You go to YouTube and hit Steve Martirano and hit Gravy. And that was something he did about 10 years ago. And it's only, Norm, it's only about a minute long. And from that tape, he's been on Jimmy Kimmel 6 times. He's been on Steve Harvey. He's been on the View. He's been on Whoopi Gold. He is the most famous cook that no one knows.
Really?
Yeah. He's cooked for Jimmy Gandolfini, the whole set. He's Shaquille O'Neal's one of his best friends. Montana hangs out with them. The guy just knows everyone and is it is the best Italian American food you will ever have in your life. Gourmet Magazine voted it the #1 meatball in the world.
In the world?
In the world.
Okay.
All right.
Now only do I have to meet him, I've got to go and see him.
We just opened a place in Pittsburgh. That would probably be your closest spot. And when you're ready to go, you let me know. Or if you're in Florida, let me know. Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, man. I'm in Fort Lauderdale all the time.
Oh, well, we'll hook it up for sure. I'm there too. We have an office in Delray.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple clients down there.
Well, this has been an incredible podcast. I'm sure we could have talked a lot more. But anyways, I know you've got other things to do than talk to some, bald bearded guy. But thanks a lot for coming. And I can't wait to talk to Steve. I can't wait to talk to him.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
All right. We'll see you later.
Have a great day. Thank you.
So that was something else.
Yeah. Man, I think he brought up a really good idea about trying to bring back some of our past guests and do a panel, because most of the guests don't know each other.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they can make any connections or, what could come of that, for sure.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for tonight, son.
Yes, sir, father.
You don't have to call me sir anymore. That was only when you were a kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I was squire, right?
Yes, you were a squire and you had to salute me.
the behind the scenes of the show.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
All right. And we'll see you next week.
That's right. All right. Up next week, we have Jeff Nix. Jeff had a successful career as an assistant coach in the NBA, as well as being a GM for the New York Knicks. We kind of get an inside view of the different stages that a basketball player would go through. Jeff actually was a promising player when he was in college, but ended up suffering from a pretty bad injury, and from there turned that around into becoming a part of the coaching staff, and that kind of launched his career. Anyway, it was a great conversation, and make sure to check it out. That's enough for me, and I'll see you next time.